Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that the Inspector General report will be given to William Barr around the time that Mueller is scheduled to testify. So, Mueller is scheduled to testify on July 17th. Robert Mueller to testify publicly before House Committee on July 17th. The announcement came after the chairman of two panels issued a subpoena compelling Mueller's testimony. He didn't even want to testify. The guy doesn't want to testify. The guy told him. The guy told everyone during his press conference, where he kind of sounded like that, where he just didn't want to talk about it anymore. It is what it is. He's going to reiterate this. Okay, this is what Mueller wrote, the report wrote. Okay, they can't come to terms with this. Page 17, and I quote, this is how they grandstand in Congress, the Democrats, and I quote, well, they should quote this. Second, while the investigation identified numerous links between individuals with ties to the Russian government and individuals associated with the Trump campaign, the evidence was not sufficient to support criminal charges. Among other things, the evidence was not sufficient to charge any campaign official as an unregistered agent of the Russian government or the Russian principal. And our evidence about the June 9, 2016 meeting and DNC emails releases of hacked materials was not sufficient to charge a criminal campaign finance violation. Furthermore, the evidence was not sufficient to charge that any member of the Trump campaign conspired with representatives of the Russian government to interfere in the 2016 election. Further, the evidence was not sufficient to charge that any member of the Trump campaign conspired with representatives of the Russian government to interfere in the 2016 election. They have not come to terms with this. They have not come to terms with this, ladies and gentlemen. They will never come to terms with this. They fabricated, set up a fake, bogus, just farce of an investigation into Trump. They framed him. I mean, it's just like one of those 80s movies where they framed Charles Bronson, or the 70s they framed Charles Bronson or Chuck Norris or Clint Eastwood or whatever. Of course, I should probably put my phone on mute. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, they framed President Trump. They framed President Trump. And they did so without any regard for the United States, for people who voted for Trump, the 62 million people. When they talk about Trump voters, 62 million people. 62 million people they tried to cheat because they cheated millions associated with Bernie Sanders. They cheated Bernie Sanders supporters on the left. They wanted to cheat 62 million plus people who voted for Trump. They had a temper tantrum that lasted over 2 years. They used a Steele dossier that was outsourced by Clinton, the Golden Moo, who will run again. 3 minutes in, but usually I wait till 17 minutes, but I won't. I'll just leave it at that. They used a CrowdStrike assessment, but CrowdStrike never even gave the information to... CrowdStrike never even gave the information, the unredacted reports to the United States government. They didn't even get the entire assessment of how Russians interfered in the election by hacking the DNC to inform the country what? Wait for it. Wait for it. Why did Putin hack the DNC? Oh yeah, it's to inform the country that Bernard Sanders was cheated. You see, when the Russians interfered in the election, they interfered by letting everyone know that I was cheated. But really, the problem is me. I'm the one who had the audacity to run against the Golden Moo, Madam Cyberhack. So now I've made amends for 2 years, trying to promote the same Red Scare McCarthy-era myth purchased by Madam Secretary. So Bernie Sanders promoted the same myth that said he was cheated. And now Mueller is going to testify about what I don't know, but I think the Inspector General report is going to be released around this time. Why? Because Democrats always find some way to try to mitigate their criminal evidence and further information of their criminal endeavors with some kind of balancing act of their own. Well, we have Mueller testifying. I mean, it's happened numerous times in the past where, like, there'll be, some new revelation and then, it just happens to go inside, or Democrats happen to have some kind of nonsensical investigation or congressional panel or whatever. So they want to get him on obstruction. They're not going to get him on obstruction. You can't obstruct an unlawful probe. This is not, the notion of obstruction of justice is that, this was a completely, the Mueller probe and the investigations prior to the Mueller probe that were started with warrants that deceived FISA judges and leaked memos, classified memos from James Comey, all illegal activity. The notion that there was any obstruction is predicated upon the belief that this was all done for the country's national security. When Peter Strzok said, "We will stop Trump," that was political chatter. Of course it didn't interfere with his bias. His bias didn't interfere with his actions, even though he deleted 5 references to gross negligence to ensure that Hillary Clinton wouldn't get indicted. And then instead, Comey used extreme carelessness, because U.S. Code 793F actually states gross negligence. And we know that Peter Strzok flew to London just for his health. Had nothing to do with the Steele dossier. And we knew that, Peter Strzok was on the Mueller team, kicked off the Mueller team with Lisa Page, just because of his text messages, which apparently weren't biased. So when they say, well, he was not biased at all, why was he kicked off the Mueller team? Which one is it? Well, the IG report said that whereas he could be biased, the prosecutorial decisions weren't biased. Yeah, because they didn't explain to prosecutors how Clinton managed to transfer top secret and special access program intelligence onto her servers. That's what people don't get. They don't care. They don't ever talk about it. And that is a criminal act. But the IG report's going to talk about all the different ways they deceived FISA judges and all the different ways they set up and framed Trump utilizing the Steele dossier and everyone around him. And all the different ways FBI agents disregarded protocol because, they were so not unbiased. Meanwhile, there's subliminal bias, subconscious bias, every single type of possible bias you can get. Oh, and by the way, when Clinton is running and she's, complaining about why she didn't win, check out HA2A. Actually, you know what? I'll do it tomorrow. Oh, maybe I'll just, tonight. That's right. After this segment, I'll upload on HA2A my latest trip to the range. It's awesome. I try out a 1911 45 ACP, 1911, of course, Springfield Armory, and it's awesome. The grouping is fantastic, actually. So check it out. That'll be below in the pinned comment. But, ladies and gentlemen, you have the Inspector General report. It should have been out already. You're going to have issues pertaining to why they used the Steele dossier, why nobody was informed, or why FISA judges were not informed that Clinton purchased the Steele dossier, why they unmasked the names, why, definitely why Strzok and McCabe and James Baker, both of whom were under criminal investigation. Strzok, who was fired from the FBI. Comey, who was fired from the FBI. Why these people utilized information they knew to be not just unverified, outlandish. You have to be an utter buffoon and fool to believe that Russia conspired with Russia interfered in the election, which unfortunately millions of people believe this now. Because it's been said over and over again. We don't know one Facebook ad that was effective enough to influence, we have no clue how many Facebook ads influenced a number, an X amount of voters. We have the Buff Bernard coloring book? What? Which Facebook ad swung the election? How many people? Because if you weren't voting for if you were Bernie or bust, you were Bernie or bust when I was Bernie or bust. I wish I voted for Trump. Trump's a very good president, and he doesn't stand for hate. He doesn't stand for bigotry. No, the Democrats actually stand for that. When they blame Russia for all their problems, that's a xenophobic Cold War, Red Scare, McCarthy-era tactic that was already been discredited through the decades. Like, I can't believe the left, liberals of all people, who grew up learning the lessons of the McCarthy era, would foment this irrational myth that is predicated upon the intelligence community's confidence assessment. So I explained in my last segment, check that one out, it's doing well. I explained in my last segment that during the Stone court case, his lawyers asked for the copy of the CrowdStrike assessment. And the U.S. government says, well, we don't have the entire copy. The U.S. government does not have the full unredacted. The U.S. government doesn't have the full unredacted CrowdStrike assessment. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? And it's bad enough that you allow the Democratic Party. Look, it is the definition of a conflict of interest to allow the Democratic Party to just hire a firm. We have no way to independently verify the firm. Then they say, well, you know what? We independently verified the CrowdStrike assessment by indicting Russian intelligence officers. Yeah, by using the CrowdStrike assessment. Oh, well, there were other means that we identified. Yeah, the basis of that was the CrowdStrike assessment. You never looked at DNC servers. So the Washington Post is like, can you believe that Roger Stone, can you even believe that his team of lawyers is saying that they think it's like an assumption? Everyone knows it's set in stone. It's the gospel. Well, then why did the ODNI and DHS reports have warranty disclaimers stating our confidence assessment should not be confused with fact, and our judgments could be wrong? That's the intelligence community. When Brennan and Clapper are pressed on their claims that the DNC was hacked, he goes, well, we do intelligence, we don't do evidence. And then James Clapper the other day is like, oh, we did exactly what Obama told us to do, and I just think it's wrong that John Durham is investigating these analysis of well-meaning, well-intentioned analysts at the intel community. I mean, what are we supposed to do, get things right? Excuse me. So, it's like, the issue is not that Mueller is going to testify, because Mueller is going to be asked simple questions by Republicans like, did you know the Steele dossier was unverified? Why did you kick off Peter Strzok and Lisa Page from your team? Why didn't you have one Republican? Why didn't you treat people like, the campaign chairman of the Golden Moo, his brother? Why didn't you, because he did the same things as Manafort, why did you treat him differently? Why did you utilize a CrowdStrike assessment, a Mueller, a Steele dossier. Nonsense from Alexander Downer. Why did you investigate why did you investigate the Trump Jr. meeting, but you didn't even reach out or interview at all Joseph Mifsud? You didn't interview Natalia Veselnitskaya. You didn't interview Assange. Why not? Why not? If you're so sure that these are contacts with Russia and these are all these things that took place. And if you knew that James Clapper had no evidence of Trump-Russia collusion prior to the special counsel investigation, why did you investigate to begin with? Well, Rod Rosenstein told me. There was no evidence to begin with, and I explained that in the Federalist. But let's listen to Lindsey Graham right here.
I hope people understand what you're talking about, because when Mueller came in to tell Barr that he couldn't decide, he couldn't make a decision about obstruction, he was going to leave it to Barr, and Barr asked him point blank, is this because of the DOJ policy you don't indict a sitting president? He said no. He said complicated facts and complicated law would not allow him to reach a conclusion. So after 2 years and X amount of dollars and FBI agents, if he couldn't decide on obstruction of justice, why do you think Barr would reach a different conclusion other than you can't prosecute?
Okay.
So, and then he goes on to talk about Madam Cyberhack. Let's see here.
You're interested in it. You will get to the bottom of it.
Okay, I want to see the Horowitz report about did the DOJ and FBI defraud the FISA court? Did they lie to the FISA court to get a warrant against Carter Page? I want to find out why they opened the counterintelligence investigation against Trump. And I really do believe the only reason Clinton wasn't charged with anything is because if you wanted her to win, how do you charge her with a crime in the middle of the campaign?
So Lindsey Graham is awesome. He stated the same thing. The only reason she wasn't charged is because the FBI, the top FBI officials like Peter Strzok and Comey and McCabe wanted her to win. Now, when people say to me, "Oh, yeah, Jay Goodman still thinks that Trump said that Clinton's going to get indicted," like, well, eventually, not imminent anymore, because we know that was a fabricated setup, cover-up from Comey, Strzok, McCabe, and Sessions was an abomination. But she committed crimes. Lindsey Graham literally states right now the only reason that she wasn't indicted was because they wanted her to win. But, I mean, the issue here is they deceived FISA judges. That's a crime. That's in addition to Andrew McCabe lying under oath, in addition to James Baker, leaking information. They're under criminal investigation. Peter Strzok literally gives the information in his text messages, the motivation to defraud the U.S. We will stop Trump. It's not difficult. It's not difficult at all. If the tables were turned, oh my God, they have every single possible advantage. And they still can't see their own criminality. And they still lose the battle of ideas. All of their most moral and righteous voices are getting clowned by the whole planet. I'm not even going to get into them. But they make the most absurd correlations and comparisons. They consistently lose debates about grandiose subject matters. They talk a big game, and when they're in power, they own the House. All they focused on is Russia and obstruction of justice, even after the whole thing was debunked. They don't talk about all their big claims, Medicare for all. AOC and others have literally stated people are losing their lives because of no Medicare for all, and how many Democrats are now pushing a Medicare for all bill. They don't talk about it because Democrats utilize the DNC millennial outreach, and you know who the YouTube channels are, and you know who the pundits are. There's DNC millennial outreach. Medicare for all, man. And I'm talking about the people who don't like me. I'm not talking about anybody who, if those channels who don't like me, those people who don't like me, they talk a big game. But at the end of the day, they vote any Democrat, which will be Hillary Clinton. She is running again. And they're going to vote for her again. These are the same people who talk about Medicare for all. And then they'll vote for Hillary Clinton. Or they'll in a cowardly way, say, well, vote for Clinton in swing states. You have a giant network on YouTube. Their only goal is to elect Clinton or any establishment Democrat when they claim they talk a big game. At the end of the day, their only goal is to push the Democratic Party narrative. You can literally look. You can watch CNN, MSNBC, read the Daily Beast and Slate, and then you can see like 4 or 5 channels on YouTube. They literally would be like the same thing. It just flows downhill to your favorite entertainer or whatever, pundit. It's the same thing. They talk a big game. At the end of the day, I'll be like, you don't want this orange monster. He stands and represents hate. It's like, no, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. There's like a million examples of how he doesn't. And everything that you try to tie to Trump, if you were to utilize that standard, and here's what they say, what aboutism? Here, if you utilize the standard and judged Clinton, the golden muumuu, she would be the epitome of everything you don't like about Trump. But anyway, that's a whole other story. Give me your thoughts below. I have a suspicion that the IG report's going to come out exactly around the time that Robert Mueller's testifying. Give me your thoughts. Thank you so very much. Check out my segment below. 1911 45 ACP, Springfield Army. It's awesome. Thank you.